parallel universes really exist? Well, people certainly have some interesting stories to share, so today I'll be telling some parallel universe stories posted to Reddit.
Hello, we are not available now.
And we're starting things off with a very eerie story posted to Reddit by Flarengo, who writes, "This happened about 15 years ago. I called my friend up and he wasn't home, so I left a message on his answering machine. I said, 'Hey, it's me. Sorry, I missed you. Call you later. Bye.' And then I hung up and left the house. I made no other calls. Later that day, he called back and he says, 'Wow, that was quite a message you left. Who was that girl you were talking to?' And I was like, 'What are you talking about? I wasn't talking to any girl.' Well, as it turns out, the message didn't end after I said bye. I had to go over to his house and listen to this message a few times. After my initial message that I did leave, as quoted above, there was a slight pause and it continues on for another 30 to 40 seconds or so with me talking to some girl. It was my voice, but a conversation I never had with a girl whose voice I didn't recognize. You can compare it to the message I know I did leave, and the two voices were indistinguishable. Not just the voice, but, talking mannerisms. It was my voice. Also, references to my occupation and activities were the same. Basically, in this conversation, I was talking to this girl about going skiing, but I had to go down to my shop and work on a car first, which totally correlated to me. Then the message just stopped. It was recorded on one of those digital answering machines that recorded the message to a chip, so there was no tape I could have taken and analyzed, unfortunately. Also, neither I nor my friend had party lines, so that's not an explanation. It was very freaky. I can't explain it." This next post was by Ninix Time, who writes about a time he may have seen parallel universe versions of his own family. The story goes like this. Around the age of 11, my family decided to go and visit my grandparents, and while we were there, I decided to go out and play around for a bit. They lived in a flat in the middle of the city. They had a road that had stores and a car park on the right, and had enough space for me to play around with my friends that lived there. As I got down and ran to that car park, a car went past that nearly crashed into me, and in that car, there were 3 passengers. A woman, her daughter, and a male driver. As I dodged that car, they looked like they had no emotions whatsoever and looked really dull. And as I focused into the car, the male driver was my dad. Very easily distinctive. And the car was our car. Same color, same car plates, same everything. I instantly ran to our car, thinking it had been stolen, but our car was sitting right there. I turned around to follow the car that nearly hit me, but it was no longer there. I ran upstairs to my grandparents' house without knowing what to do or what to say. Luckily, my sister was right by the door, and I told her the story and what I saw. She just laughed, telling me that my dad hadn't left the house yet. Next up, we have a post with the heading, "Sudden and Short Shift into Parallel Universe" by BB Shuri, which goes as follows. I was very much in love with a guy, and one day we were hanging out in his car, just chilling. He was telling me a story about his nephew who had a schizophrenic episode or something, and I was just listening, totally into the story, when suddenly I found myself sitting in a different car with him. This specific car was an old timer, and I had a wedding dress on. He had on a tuxedo. I remember feeling so happy and elevated, and he was a little bit grumpy because we were waiting for someone and there was this time pressure. We had to be at the venue. The scene lasted maybe 5 seconds, but everything was so real. I could feel the air, the atmosphere. I could feel my wedding dress, the temperature, the emotions, everything. I remember looking outside the window and seeing that we were parked beside a building, and the person we were waiting for was in the building. The building was on a hill, surrounded by nature. In a snap, I was back in the regular car with him, right at the moment he was finishing his story. I have no idea what he told me. At the time, I didn't know what the frig just happened, but now I can maybe see it as a glitch into a parallel universe where we did get married. Next Reddit user is NYZ312, who discusses a very strange incident when they may have died and shown up in another timeline. They write, "I've never really discussed this with anyone, but thought this may be the place to at least see what you think. I was driving down a street that is somewhat busy, 4 lanes, 2 each way, and there was a light rain. I came to a light that I wanted to turn left, across traffic. There's no dedicated turning lane. I waited till I thought it was clear, but just as I turned left, someone came around the inner opposite lane and I could see we were going to collide. I closed my eyes. The next thing I knew, I was on the street I intended to turn on, 2 blocks up on the side of the street, just sitting there, no collision. I gathered myself and went on, but I think about it a lot. My scar is on the wrong side, posted by Charming Medium. This will sound weird, but I have to share this, so I'll explain. When I was very young, I was diagnosed with leukemia. I'm now cancer-free, thankfully, but back then I had a port cath installed. It was on my left side. It was always on my left side. Once it was removed, I had a scar on my left side. I don't know how or when, but the scar is now on my right side. I can't even begin to explain how. About 3 years ago, I remember looking at my left side and being unable to find it. I looked around to see where it may have moved, but I couldn't find it. I eventually forgot about it, and sometime last year when I got out of the shower, I noticed it. It was on my right side. I asked my grandmother about it. I asked what side my port was on. As expected, she said it was my left, and she was just as confused as I was about it being on my right side. It still bothers me, and I think about it sometimes. It makes me uneasy in a way I can't explain. I always joked about the whole glitch in the Matrix stuff, the Mandela effect and everything. I don't know what to think anymore. Posted to Reddit by Balthazar, she writes about a disturbing incident she had in class that led to a series of disturbing dreams. It started around the time I had just gotten into high school. So around the time I was about 12 to 13, I guess. It was register period on the first day back after school holidays. We all wait for our names to be read and each of us reply. The teacher reads out a name and nobody answers. Out of nowhere, I get this feeling like someone just ripped my stomach out and replaced it with ice cubes. I find it odd, but I can't shake the feeling. Anyway, about 5 minutes later, another new student enters the class and my jaw almost drops. Except for having red hair, she could have been my twin. The teacher sits her near me and I can't stop staring. She notices me and looks just as astonished. We begin a conversation, but the uneasy feeling stays with me. About 10 minutes later, the principal walks into the classroom and I freeze and clutch the desk. Here it comes. The teacher notices and walks over to the principal. They lean in together and he whispers something to her. She nods and he steps forward facing class. "I'm sorry, class, but Miss X," the girl not present at register that morning, "has passed away over the holidays. She took her own life." I tuned out for the rest of what she said and just started crying uncontrollably, and that set off the rest of the class. The dreams started after this. I cannot say why, as I don't know. To go into each and every specific dream would be insanity. It's a very detailed. Let's just say when people I have had contact with, no matter how briefly in life, are about to die, I dream their deaths about 3 days beforehand. I will simply state that it is not possible to be mere coincidence based on how many people's deaths I have dreamt. 2 colleagues I have worked with, 3 grandparents, 1 great-grandfather, 1 friend's grandfather, 2 school teachers, 1 lady I met briefly for 5 minutes one day at work, at least 3 friends, all dead within 3 days of my dreams. Make of it what you will. This next post is called "I May Have Saved My Dad in Another Universe." It was posted by Karina Nebula 89, and it reads, "My dad died a year ago, and a few months later, I had a dream that felt as real as reality, being wide awake. He was alive in that dream, and I was very confused about that. I remembered the police report I read. He died in his apartment, luckily, seemingly in his sleep, and the police had to break in. He lived in a social house building in which they checked the tenants daily, and when he didn't open the door, they called the police. I remembered the time of death on the police report, and in that dream, that time of date had not happened yet. Another reason why this dream felt so real. I could see dates and everything on my phone clearly. Everything was logical, and time passed normally, like it would while being awake. But the time was approaching. I made a plan to get him to the hospital, but he was taking his sweet time getting ready, and I was getting anxious because I knew the time of death was soon, but he did not really get why I was getting so serious about leaving. Eventually I checked my phone again, and the time was right after the time of death on the police report, and my dad was still alive and well. I was baffled. He still went to the hospital, but while he was on the way there, I woke up. This next post is from Witty Turnover 5585 and reads, "So I'm scrolling YouTube a little bit ago and see a video titled The 11-Day Disappearance of Agatha Christie, and I thought it was a mistake, so I watched the video and a few others to see, sure enough, she was only missing for 11 days. But I vividly remember my favorite show growing up, Unsolved Mysteries, having an episode about her disappearance. And in this episode, she kisses her daughter, walks out the back door, and vanishes, never to be seen again. I thought at the time it was weird because I'd learned about her in school and had to do a book report at one time. So I searched for this particular episode, and there is one of her, but again, she was only gone for 11 days. I think I skipped universes at some point because that's not the history where I'm from. Anyone else have something similar happen? Next up, we have a post by Naoiyyii. Don't know how to pronounce that. It's entitled, "My Maybe Experience in a Different Universe." It was in the middle of the night and I had just woke up. I don't know why I woke up, but I was up. I felt weird. I felt like it was super quiet, like too quiet. I know it was the middle of the night, but it was weird. I felt like everything was down in scale, like my room was smaller, my bed was smaller, and everything was. I was so confused. It was also pitch black outside, like no lights at all. It was weird, and I started crying and ran to my mom's room. My mom was looking at me weird, and she asks me what's wrong. I told her I don't know where I am with a crying tone, and she just looked at me like I'm crazy. She told me I can lay with her if I want. I was 11 at the time, and I won't forget it. I swear everything was too quiet and dark. When I woke up, I felt completely normal, and it seemed like nothing had happened. My mom also, for some reason, didn't even know I went into her room that night, but maybe she was just too tired to remember. And finally, we have a Reddit post by EqualStance99 entitled, "Shirt suddenly went missing and then appeared a few days later." Hi, I've had a few encounters throughout my life that are mostly explainable using logic. However, I cannot find any explanation to this experience. I took some pants and shirt out of my cupboard and put them on my bed to get dressed. I turned around, closed the cupboard, but when I turned back around to get dressed, the shirt was just missing. I searched everywhere, but I just couldn't find it. Yesterday, the shirt appeared back in my cupboard, neatly folded, as if I had never touched it. I am positive that I didn't miss it because upon its return, it was on the top of all my shirts and no other one is that color. I am beyond bewildered at this simple yet unexplainable occurrence. Any of you have any kind of weird experiences with parallel universes or Mandela effects? Let us know down in the comments. I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically,